Awareness is the starting point because nothing in your life changes until you begin to notice what is actually happening inside you. Most people go through life on autopilot. They wake up, feel a certain way, react to situations, and never stop to question why. Their thoughts run like a loop in the background, the same patterns day after day, and because it feels familiar, they believe it's normal. But familiarity is not the same as truth. Just because you have thought something for years doesn't make it reality. It only means you have rehearsed it so many times that it has become automatic. That is why awareness is so powerful. It disrupts that autopilot mode. The moment you stop and observe yourself, you create a space between the emotion and your reaction. That small space is where transformation begins. Awareness means you start paying attention to what you say to yourself in your own mind. It's noticing that when you wake up, maybe your first thought is already negative. Maybe it's "I'm tired," or "today will be hard," or "I don't feel like doing anything." Those words are not harmless. They are commands to your subconscious mind, and your body will follow them without resistance because it's been trained to. But until you actually hear those thoughts and become conscious of them, you can't change them. It's like trying to fix a machine without ever opening it up to see what's inside. Awareness is that opening. It's the moment you shine a light on the hidden programming that's been running your life. Most people think their feelings just happen to them, but in truth, they are the result of repeated thoughts. You feel what you think about. If you constantly think about things that could go wrong, about times you've been hurt, about why life is unfair, you will naturally feel anxious, angry, or hopeless. But without awareness, you'll think those emotions are just part of who you are. You'll say, "I'm just an anxious person," or "I've always been this way." That's not true. You've just been thinking the same kind of thoughts for so long that they've created a consistent emotional state. When you become aware, you start to separate yourself from those thoughts. You realize, wait, I'm thinking this right now, I'm feeling this right now, but that doesn't mean I am this. It's like being in a dark room for years and thinking that's just the world, dark, cold, limited. But the moment someone lights a candle, you see what's really there. Awareness is that candle. Suddenly you realize you have choices. You can think something different. You can respond differently. You can choose a different meaning for what's happening. But here's the challenge. The mind will resist awareness at first. The moment you start observing your thoughts, you might feel uncomfortable because you'll see how often you've been sabotaging yourself. You'll catch yourself saying things that are filled with self-doubt, fear, or resentment, and it's tempting to judge yourself for that. But judgment is just another trap. Awareness without judgment is the key. You're not looking at your thoughts to punish yourself. You're looking so you can understand and redirect. Think about it. A captain can't steer a ship if he doesn't even know where it's drifting. You are the captain of your life, and awareness is like pulling out the map and checking your coordinates. Without that, you'll just float wherever the winds of habit take you. That's why awareness is not something you do once. It's a daily practice. You might start by noticing how you feel when you talk to certain people, how your energy shifts in different environments, how your body reacts when you think about certain situations. Every reaction is a clue. Every pattern you spot is a doorway to change. The more you pay attention, the more control you gain over your life's direction. When you live without awareness, life feels like it's happening to you. When you live with awareness, life starts happening through you. You begin to realize that you are not your thoughts, you are not your feelings, and you are not the limitations you once believed. You are the one who observes them, and therefore you can choose to shift them. This is the first and most essential step to overcoming negative feelings and transforming your destiny, because without it, you will simply repeat the same emotional patterns, the same decisions, the same outcomes, thinking it's fate when in reality it's just unexamined habit. Awareness gives you the power to interrupt that cycle and opens the door to everything else that follows in your personal growth journey. Rewriting the inner script begins with the understanding that the mind is like a projector, constantly casting the story you believe about yourself onto the screen of your life. Most people are walking around with a script they didn't write consciously. It was formed by childhood experiences, by what parents, teachers, and peers said, by moments of failure or embarrassment, by cultural beliefs, and by the media they consumed. Those experiences got repeated, reinforced, and eventually hardened into beliefs. The mind holds onto these beliefs like a script, and every day you act them out without even realizing it. If that script says, "I'm not good enough," you will unknowingly make choices that confirm it. If it says, "Life is hard," you will find ways to make it difficult. The script becomes your silent director, shaping every scene of your life without your consent, unless you take the pen back. To rewrite the inner script, you first have to identify it. This means listening closely to the story you tell yourself about who you are and what's possible for you. Every time you say, "I am," or "I can't," or "that's just how I am," you're revealing a line from your inner script. For example, if your script says, "I'm terrible with money," you will unconsciously make choices that ensure you remain broke, not because you want to be, but because your mind is loyal to the story. If your script says, "I never finish anything," you'll notice a trail of unfinished projects, and you'll shrug it off as just the way I am. But that's not who you are. That's who you've been programmed to be. Rewriting the script means catching those lines, questioning them, and replacing them with new ones that support the life you want. One of the most powerful things about the mind is that it cannot hold two conflicting truths for long without one giving way. If you start feeding it a new, stronger belief, eventually it will overwrite the old one. This is why affirmations, visualizations, and intentional language work, not because they magically change reality on their own, but because they change the inner narrative that shapes your choices. The old script might say, "I'm unlucky," but if you repeatedly tell yourself, "I create my own opportunities," and you back it with action, the mind will start searching for evidence to match that new belief. This shift doesn't happen overnight. You're not just rewriting words, you're reprogramming emotional associations, breaking neural pathways that have been wired for years, and replacing them with new ones. When you rewrite your script, you also begin to see how much of your life has been lived on repeat. You notice patterns, the same type of relationships, the same financial struggles, the same emotional triggers, all because the script was designed to keep you in a familiar loop. Familiarity feels safe to the subconscious, even if it's painful. That's why change often feels uncomfortable at first. It's not because change is bad, but because the subconscious is attached to the old script. The trick is to lean into that discomfort and recognize it as a sign that you're breaking free from a story that no longer serves you. The process requires imagination as much as discipline. You have to see yourself as the person in the new script before it feels real. If the old story was about struggle, the new story might be about ease and resourcefulness. If the old story was about rejection, the new one might be about connection and worthiness. You begin rehearsing this new role in your mind daily. You picture yourself speaking differently, walking differently, making decisions differently. Over time, the body starts to follow the mind. The way you carry yourself shifts, the way you react to challenges changes, and people start responding to you in new ways, all because the script you're following has changed. Rewriting the inner script also means removing the lines that don't belong to you. Many of the limiting beliefs you carry were never truly yours. They were handed down to you by someone else who was living from their own script of fear or scarcity. When you realize that, you stop feeling obligated to keep reciting their words in your life. You can thank the past for the lessons, but you don't have to let it dictate your future scenes. Every time you consciously choose a thought that aligns with your vision instead of your old programming, you are editing the script. Every time you act from that new belief, you're cementing it deeper into your mind. And slowly, the scenes of your life begin to shift to match the new story you've chosen to live. Emotions are signals, not sentences. And the moment you truly grasp this, your entire relationship with how you feel begins to shift. Most people treat their emotions as if they are life sentences, fixed, unchangeable states that they must endure until some external circumstance changes. They feel sad and decide, I am a sad person. They feel anxious and start to believe, I have no control over my nerves. They feel unmotivated and conclude, I'm just lazy. What they don't realize is that emotions are nothing more than messages from the mind and body. They are indicators, not identities. They are the body's way of saying, something needs your attention. Just like a traffic light tells you when to stop, slow down, or go, emotions are signals guiding you toward better awareness and action. When you feel anger, it's often a sign that a boundary has been crossed, or that something in your life feels unfair or misaligned with your values. When you feel fear, it's usually an alert that you're stepping outside your comfort zone or that there's uncertainty ahead. When you feel sadness, it can be a sign that you've lost something meaningful or that you're disconnected from something important. But here's the thing. Just because an emotion arrives doesn't mean it's permanent or even accurate in its interpretation. Emotions are shaped by your perspective, by the thoughts you've been dwelling on, and by the meaning you attach to events. Two people can face the exact same situation and feel completely different things because they read the signal in different ways. The real problem comes when people mistake the signal for a life sentence. They begin to carry it around, nurture it, and identify with it until it becomes part of their self-image. For example, someone who feels anxious before public speaking might tell themselves, I'm just not good at speaking in front of people. And from that moment forward, they build a reality around that belief. They avoid opportunities, they decline invitations, and they reinforce the idea that their anxiety is permanent. But if they understood that the anxiety was simply a signal, perhaps telling them they need more preparation, practice, or a shift in perspective, they could take action to address it instead of accepting it as a lifelong limitation. Emotions also have a lifespan. They rise, peak, and fall, just like waves in the ocean. No wave lasts forever, and no emotional state is meant to be eternal. Yet, when you cling to an emotion by replaying the thoughts that triggered it, you keep it alive far longer than necessary. Think about it. If you get upset at someone in the morning and then replay that moment in your head all day, you're not just feeling the original emotion, you're recreating it again and again. Through your thoughts, you've turned a temporary signal into a self-imposed sentence. The awareness that you are doing this is powerful because it allows you to stop feeding the emotion and let it pass. Another key to understanding emotions as signals is learning to decode them without judgment. The moment you judge yourself for feeling a certain way, you add another layer of negativity on top of the original feeling. For example, you might feel sadness and then tell yourself, I shouldn't feel this way, I should be stronger, which adds guilt or shame to the sadness. Now you're dealing with multiple emotions instead of just one. But if you can step back and say, this feeling is trying to tell me something, you shift from being consumed by it to being curious about it. Curiosity is the gateway to clarity. Instead of drowning in the feeling, you begin to ask questions like, what triggered this? What story am I telling myself about this? What can I do to move through it? Sometimes the signal is pointing towards something you need to change in your external environment, like leaving a toxic relationship or setting better boundaries at work. Other times, the signal is pointing inward, asking you to shift your internal dialogue. challenge an old belief, or simply give yourself permission to rest. The more you practice treating emotions as guidance rather than identity, the easier it becomes to take constructive action. You start to see that every emotion, even the uncomfortable ones, has value because it reveals information about where you are and what you need. It's also worth noting that not all negative emotions are bad, in the sense we often think. Discomfort can be a sign of growth. Nervousness can mean you're about to do something that matters to you. Frustration can mean you're ready for a breakthrough. When you start seeing emotions this way, you stop resisting them and start using them. Instead of trying to run away from fear, you can acknowledge it, thank it for the warning, and then move forward anyway. Instead of letting sadness sink you, you can use it as a signal to reconnect with what's important. Instead of allowing anger to control you, you can use it as fuel for positive change. This way, emotions become allies instead of enemies, signals that guide you rather than sentences that imprison you. Visualization as a tool for destiny works because the mind cannot distinguish between something vividly imagined and something actually experienced. When you close your eyes and create a detailed picture of the life you want, your brain begins to wire itself as if that life is already real. This is not some mystical trick, it's a neurological reality. The subconscious mind takes the images you feed it as instructions, and it begins to work tirelessly to align your actions, decisions, and focus with those images. That's why people who constantly picture failure tend to sabotage themselves. Their mind is simply carrying out the mental blueprint they've been reinforcing. On the other hand, when you consistently visualize success, fulfillment, and growth, you start laying down a new blueprint that pulls you toward the life you've envisioned. Most people think of visualization as simply daydreaming about what they want, but that's only scratching the surface. True visualization engages all the senses. It's not just seeing a picture in your mind, it's hearing the sounds, feeling the emotions, smelling the scents, tasting the moments, and experiencing the scene as if it were happening right now. If you visualize yourself standing on a stage speaking confidently, you don't just imagine the crowd, you hear the applause, feel the warmth of the lights, notice the texture of the microphone in your hand, sense the steadiness in your breathing. The more detailed and immersive the image, the more real it feels to your brain, and the stronger the neural connections that support it become. The mind works on repetition. The more often you feed it a certain image, the more it accepts it as part of your identity. This is why athletes rehearse their performance mentally before stepping into the arena. A sprinter will imagine every step of the race, the feel of the track under their feet, the surge of power in their muscles, the moment they cross the finish line. By the time they actually run, they've already been there dozens of times in their mind. This process doesn't just prepare the body, it conditions the mind to believe, and belief is the foundation for action. If you believe something is possible and see yourself doing it, you are far more likely to take the steps that make it happen. Visualization also has a powerful effect on your emotional state. When you picture your desired future in vivid detail, your body responds with the same biochemical reactions it would have if the event were real. You feel motivated, confident, and uplifted, not because the event has happened yet, but because your nervous system is reacting to the mental experience. This shift in emotional state can be the fuel that pushes you to take the daily actions needed to turn your vision into reality. When you visualize consistently, you create a loop. The vision inspires emotion, the emotion fuels action, and the action brings you closer to the vision, which makes the vision even more believable. However, visualization works best when it's paired with clarity. If your mental images are vague or constantly shifting, your mind doesn't have a clear blueprint to follow. You need to know exactly what you want to see, instead of saying, "I want to be successful." You picture what success looks like for you, specifically the environment you're in, the people you're surrounded by, the way your days are structured, the way you feel when you wake up. This clarity not only strengthens the mental image, but also helps you recognize opportunities in the real world that align with your vision. Your brain is wired to filter information through something called the reticular activating system, and when you feed it a clear vision, it starts noticing anything that could help make that vision real. Consistency is another critical part of visualization. Doing it once in a while won't create the mental momentum you need. Just as a seed doesn't grow from being watered once, your vision won't flourish from occasional focus. Daily practice is what keeps the image alive and active in your mind. Even 5 minutes of deep, focused visualization every morning can create a profound shift over time. The key is to do it with emotion. A flat, detached mental picture has little power, but when you bring energy, excitement, and gratitude into the vision, you charge it with the emotional electricity that drives change. Visualization is also a way to reprogram your self-image. You can't achieve a reality that is out of alignment with how you see yourself. If you see yourself as someone who is shy, unsuccessful, or undeserving, you will unconsciously act in ways that keep you in that box. But when you repeatedly visualize yourself as confident, capable, and worthy, your subconscious begins to adopt that identity. Slowly, you'll notice your habits shift, your posture change, your tone of voice strengthen, and your willingness to take risks increase. This is how visualization starts to shape your destiny, by shaping the person you believe yourself to be, which in turn shapes the life you create. Action is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Without it, even the most powerful thoughts, the clearest vision, and the deepest belief remain locked inside the mind, never translating into real-world change. Many people get caught in the trap of constant preparation, reading books, taking courses, imagining what they want, but never stepping into motion. They wait for the perfect moment, for absolute certainty, for the fear to disappear. The truth is, the perfect moment never comes, and fear rarely vanishes before you act. Action itself is what creates clarity and dissolves fear. Every step you take, no matter how small, builds a bridge from the mental world of possibilities to the physical world of results. When you take action, you send a message to your subconscious that you are serious about the change you want. It shifts you from being a passive thinker into an active creator. The energy of movement generates momentum, and momentum is one of the most powerful forces in personal transformation. Think of a car. It takes more effort to start it from a complete stop than it does to keep it moving once it's rolling. The same is true in life. The first steps might feel heavy and awkward, but each action makes the next one easier, and soon you find yourself in a rhythm. Even if the initial actions are imperfect, they create feedback, and that feedback becomes fuel for improvement. Action also has the power to rewrite your beliefs faster than thinking alone. If you've been telling yourself, "I'm not good at speaking to people," you can read every communication book on the shelf and visualize yourself talking confidently, but until you actually speak to someone, your brain won't fully accept the new identity. The moment you take that action, even if your voice shakes, you give your mind evidence that the old belief is not absolute truth. Every piece of evidence you create through action chips away at the old programming and reinforces the new one. Over time, this process builds unshakable confidence because it's rooted in lived experience, not just imagination. Taking action doesn't always mean taking massive leaps. In fact, small, consistent steps often create bigger transformations than rare bursts of extreme effort. Consistency compounds results. A single workout won't change your body, but daily movement over months will transform it completely. One conversation won't heal a relationship, but regular, intentional communication can rebuild trust and connection. When you break your vision down into small, manageable actions, You remove the overwhelm that often stops people before they start. Each completed step is a small victory, and those victories accumulate, changing how you see yourself and what you believe is possible. It's important to understand that action is rarely comfortable at first. Growth lives on the other side of discomfort, and action is the vehicle that gets you there. The resistance you feel before acting is not a sign to stop. It's a sign that you're about to step beyond the boundaries of your current identity. The mind will try to pull you back to the familiar, even if the familiar is painful, because it equates familiarity with safety. But when you push through that resistance and act anyway, you expand the limits of what your mind believes you can handle. The next time you face a similar challenge, it feels easier because you've already crossed that bridge once. Action also creates opportunities that thinking alone could never produce. You can sit in your room imagining the perfect job, but until you start networking, applying, and showing up in places where opportunities live, you remain invisible to the world. Action puts you in the path of possibility. It's often in motion that you meet the right people,